Good morning, everyone. My name is Lenny Orlov. I'm with the Human Services Department, and I will be your host today on another Age-Friendly Live show. Welcome back to everyone who's been here before. If you're new here, please do follow us on our social media. If you're watching this on YouTube, click that subscribe button and the bell to enable notifications. And as you can see, we're broadcasting live again from my Seattle apartment. And as we do every program, we would like to start off today with a land acknowledgement. At the City of Seattle and Seattle Human Services, we acknowledge that we are on the traditional land of the first people of Seattle, the Duwamish people, past and present. We honor with gratitude the land itself and the Duwamish tribe. Please visit duwamishtribe.org to learn more about the Duwamish, people of the inside, people who are still here. Thank you so much, and let us continue with our program. We're going to meet Tanya Kim and Lan Pham from the Seattle Human Services Department and learn all about the Safe and Thriving Communities Division and the Mayor's Office on Domestic Violence and Sexual Assault. First, though, I wanted to check in with folks on some housekeeping, such as language access. It's interesting that language access is housekeeping, but it is. You can turn on captions in English and 6 other languages. That's available both live and on YouTube. If you are joining us live, there is a call-in option. The number is 206-686-8357. And then there's a conference ID, which is 224-689-164. And we do have a couple of folks joining us that way already, but we would appreciate you sharing the link and sharing the call-in number as well. Well, what is age-friendly Seattle and age-friendly in general? What I usually say is it's a worldwide movement, and it still is. It's this idea that we can make municipalities like the city of Seattle or the state of Washington or the state of New York or New York City, we can make those places better to grow up and grow old. And so this kind of a lifespan approach to making communities more livable. And the World Health Organization has identified 8 domains of livability, which include housing, they include transportation, access to information, civic and social participation. And the city of Seattle has signed on to improve livability along all those domains. And we have an action plan that you're welcome to check out. You can see that at seattle.gov/AFS, which stands for Age-Friendly Seattle. And you can see, in addition to the action plan, which runs from 2018 and through the end of this year, you can see annual reports talking about some of our accomplishments and some of our continued aspirations for the city of Seattle. We hope that you will check it out and let us know what you think about it. Regardless of how you're joining us, we would like to welcome you to the coffee hour. That's been a tradition for over a decade. And now that it's virtual, it used to be an in-person event with donuts and coffee and schmoozing. In this virtual format, we have presenters, but we also have moderators. And I'm excited to announce that in addition to our mainstays, Michael and Justin, we are introducing Gira Hamam, our brand new moderator. And she is interning with the Seattle Human Services, Aging and Disability Services Division from the University of Washington. So you might see Gira later on today as part of this presentation, where as you type in your questions, and we do encourage you to go ahead and engage civilly. That's the hashtag right there. Put in your questions even before the presentation or during. We will collect all the questions and then try to get to all of them. by reading them online on camera, and the presenters will then try to address them. If there is a question, however, that comes up today that goes beyond the scope of the presentations that you'll hear today, you can call Community Living Connections at 1-844-348-5464 with any question or issue related to aging or disability. It's a network of organizations in communities throughout Seattle and King County that could connect you with resources such as food, meals, and other opportunities and resources. And they're also available online at communitylivingconnections.org. And I believe we're going to have this information in the live Q&A and also in the description of the YouTube video. Before going on to our first presenter, and that's going to be a brief update from the Seattle Public Library, our partner on these events since 2020. I'd like to mention that in 2 weeks on Close to Home, Stories of Health, Tech, and Resilience, which is a sister program of the Civic Coffee Hour that you're participating in today, we will have 2 guests from the community. And that's the difference between these 2 events. The coffee hours, they bring community elders to government decision makers to connect, to discuss how things are run in government. Close to Home is an opportunity to connect this way with community leaders. And as we will begin celebrating National Fair Housing Month, as the hashtag suggests, we will welcome on April 1st 2 guests, one from Sustainable Housing for Ageless Generations, Jay Wolford, also known as SHAG, and we'll also see Sarah Cisco make a return appearance from HopeLink Mobility Management. HopeLink and SHAG work together on a lot of projects, so this is a great panel that I'm really looking forward to. Sarah will talk about one of the tools they've developed for finding rides in this community. It's called Find a Ride, and also about vaccination transportation. So I think that's really relevant right now. So at this time, I would like to turn it over to the special agent in charge of age friendliness at the Seattle Public Library, Nancy Sloat. Nancy, it's been a pleasure working with you over the past couple of years. I know the library is doing a whole lot, even as the doors are currently closed. And it's a road to reopening. So without further ado, you're live on the Civic Coffee Hour for that update.
Great. Hello. Good morning, everyone. And thank you, Lenny. I just wanted to say how much I've enjoyed working with Lenny and the staff at Age Friendly, and how much we also appreciate our partnership with you, both as a librarian and as an older adult myself. I learn a tremendous amount about government and community services to older adults. So as the slide shows, I'm the Older Adults Program Manager for Seattle Public Library, and I design services and programs for older adults. So this morning, I just want to take a few minutes to talk about some of the services that we do have and what's coming up for the library. So could I have the next slide? So the library, just like everyone else, I really want the physical branches to open and have people be able to get into the buildings. I really, really miss browsing the shelves to find wonderful, wonderful items. We are working on that, and we hope to have a few branches open with some services by the end of the month, but the library website will give all that information when it happens. But meanwhile, everyone can still get books and other materials from the library. We call it our curbside pickup. We place a hold on materials, and then you get a notice that it's come in or a telephone call, and then you go to that branch to pick up your materials. You don't need an appointment to do that. We used to have that when we first started last summer, but we found that it's faster if you just sort of go for a will call. We also, I just wanted to make sure people knew that if you drove to a branch and you have a more difficult time getting out of your car, or you need some other kind of assistance and are unable to stand in line, that you can just call that branch and staff will check out your items and bring them out to the car for you. At the bottom of the slide, it shows that we also have what's called curbside printing. A lot of people have really missed the printers and the computers inside the library, and we can print 10 copies for you per day. That's thanks to a generous grant from the Library Foundation. So make sure you know that you can do that as well. Could I have the next slide? So besides all of our collections and books and digital collections, I think the thing that people think about the library is getting their questions answered. And one of my favorite services of the library is our phone reference service. It's called Quick Information. They answer thousands and thousands and thousands of questions a month. I think the staff is phenomenal. They can find almost anything within a couple of minutes. And if it's a longer question, we turn that over to other library staff to do some more research on. They are really great at walking patrons through how to get ebooks and our other digital materials. If you've never tried to do streaming movies, or if you've never downloaded an ebook, they are really great at walking you through step by step, figuring out what kind of tablet you have or where you're downloading or what kind of phone. They're just truly amazing. And sometimes, here's an admission, I actually call Quick Information because I can't figure out a particular library process or a new service that we have, and they are always right on top of it. If you prefer to email or live chat with the library, you can also do that through our website at spl.org/ask. And you usually get an answer within 48 hours, sometimes much sooner than that. Okay, the next slide. Another thing I just wanted to make sure everybody knew was that our website, library website, spl.org, in addition to being in English, you can search the library's website in all of these different languages: Chinese, Khmer, Russian, Somali, Spanish, Thai, and Vietnamese. I think that got, oh no, it's there. I just can't see it. And when you go onto the library's website, should be clear where you can change the language. But again, if you have any trouble doing it or finding it, call our Quick Information line. Next slide. There are a lot of services that are free at the library, for example, getting your questions answered. But in order to check out any digital materials or any physical books or CDs or DVDs, you of course need a library card. The card is free. If you don't have a card now, we've tried to make it easy for you to get what we call an instant card, which gives you access to the digital materials. Instantly, you need a cell phone number, but we are able to do that almost instantly. And then a few days later, we can get you, or we can convert that to a regular card. If you prefer and you're at a library location, you can, at one of the curbside locations, start the process for getting a card too. So again, I encourage you to call Quick Information if you have any questions about how to get a card. Next slide. So one of our most popular services are the hotspots that we lend. We have over 500 hotspots. that circulate. You place a hold on them, and then you go pick it up at a curbside location. It's You can check it out for 3 weeks, and it gives you instant access to the internet. It's really, really easy if you've never used a hotspot before. Literally, you turn it on, and your phone or your tablet just connects to the hotspot network, and you are ready to go. So library is even adding more hotspots. It's very, very popular. You may have to wait a week or two to get one, but go ahead and do that if you need access to the internet. Next slide, please. Of course, it's tax season, and I just heard this morning that the filing date is being extended to May, so that's a sense of relief for everybody. Many of you may have used and come to the branches in previous years and gotten your taxes done by either United Way or ARP. Obviously, that's changed this year, but both organizations are offering free tax preparation for people. And you can either go to those sites, United Way or ARP, to make an appointment, or you can again call the library. We have all of the information, phone numbers, websites to go to do that. But the library also has has tax forms like it has in the past. And at all of our curbside locations, we have the 1040, the 1040 SR for older adults. We have them both in English and in Spanish. And down at the Central Library, we have more forms as well. But any form that you need, you can also ask the library to print if you need access to a printer. So that's also great. Could I have the next slide? This is a new service, our museum passes. We brought the service back. Obviously, when everything was closed, we no longer were printing passes because nobody was going into the museums. But now that museums are opening back up, the museum passes, the library and the museum works to provide one free pass a day for the whole system. It's hard to get one sometimes, but one lucky person each day will be able to go to the Burke Museum or Museum of Popular Culture or Nordic Heritage Museum or Seattle Aquarium, and just recently also the Wing Luke Museum. And so you sign up to get the pass, you print it, you would bring it with you, the pass, to the museum. Now, because of capacity limits at museums, all museums are requiring that you also find an entry time with them. So there's another step now. Again, all of that information is on the library's website. And if you want help just working through the process of getting a museum pass, then call our information. The aquarium is one of my favorite places in Seattle. And I just want to say in the next slide, tell you about some of the upcoming programs that we're doing at the library. This is part of our older adults programming. We call it Next Chapter. These are the programs that we've put together and services that we've put together for older adults. So in April, we're holding a series from the People's Memorial Association called Ducks in a Row. It's about end-of-life planning. And it will cover healthcare directives and advanced directives and estate planning and funeral options in Washington State. And I can say I've been through this program and attended it a variety of times, and it was really very, very helpful to me. And I told a lot of my colleagues about it as well. You do need to register for the 3 different classes in April. And you can find that on the library's website in the library's calendar. Next slide. We are continuing with our wonderful Silver Kite workshops. Silver Kite is a community arts organization, and they have been offering virtual classes in all kinds of artistic disciplines, painting and drawing, dance, theater. We even have a senior social hour a couple of times a month. The most popular program has been Bollywood dance. Everybody just loves it. They feel much better after they get through to the class. And you know what? You can do this in the privacy of your own home. So, for anybody who's shy about dancing in front of other people, myself included, this is a great option to go virtually. Uh, next slide, please. I just want you to invite you to visit our Next Chapter site on the library's website, the www.spl.org/next chapter, no space between next and chapter. Talks about the programming that we're doing. There's access to book lists. There's access to kind of blog posts about older adults. And my final slide is just my contact information. And I welcome anybody, either now or later, contacting me to talk about older adult services and kinds of programming that you're interested in and your experiences at the library. And that's about it this morning from the library.
All right. Thank you so much, Nancy. We appreciate the update as always. We have a longer show today. I hope you're enjoying the coffee hour. I hope you have a beverage that you have prepared. Unfortunately, we can't provide those to you virtually, but maybe soon. Maybe soon we'll be able to do that. If you have any questions for Nancy, please go ahead and put those into the live Q&A at this time. And even later, when we upload this to our YouTube channel, you're more than welcome to leave a comment. Give the video a like if you enjoy getting this information. But now we're going to move on to an intermission that we usually provide in these events, which is an update on vaccinations. As you know, additional people are being considered as eligible for vaccines, and the way to find out about your eligibility is, I think the easiest website to visit on this is coronavirus.wa.gov. One downside to using this website, full disclosure, is if you go ahead and click that yellowish button that has a magnifying glass and it says Vaccine Phase Finder, you will be redirected to the Phase Finder engine that has been put together by the Department of Health. It will be in English and Spanish only, but they do have it in a variety of, I think, up to 30 other languages. However, if you were just to click at the top there and select one of the languages, you would get general information about COVID-19. There is a trick to how you can get to Vaccine Phase Finder. For some reason, it's a little bit hidden on that website. As this is on this page, there's information about, what businesses, the reopening guidance, what's open, etc., like that. If we scroll down the page here, it actually lists the phone numbers that you can call to find out your phase if there isn't, if you don't have access to the internet or not getting through, let's say it keeps loading, right? So you can try giving them a call. I'll list those numbers in a minute. But if you were to go to one of the buttons on the right here, the COVID-19 vaccine distribution planning, if you click that and then click the COVID-19 info on the page that opens, that'll open up a page with all the different languages listed. And once you click that, then you'll be able to get to the vaccine finder in the language that you would like to use. And it was really great to hear that the library has a variety of languages available on their website. So if you would like to find out by phone, the number is 1-800-525-0127. 800-525-0127, open 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. On Mondays, that's the hours. And then Tuesday through Friday, they have more availability. And then, which is 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. And then on Saturday and Sunday and observed holidays, they also are open 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. If that number is busy, you can call 1-888-856-5816. Again, 888-856-5816 with any questions about COVID-19, but also about vaccines and your status. One other number to provide before we move on to our main event is the Washington Listens line. It's designed to provide a place for people to talk to someone about the stress that COVID-19 is causing in their lives. And that number is 1-833-681-0211, 833-681-0211. And it's open Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. and on weekends, 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. We hope that you will pass these resources along to anyone that you think may benefit from using them. And thank you. So now I'm going to welcome my colleagues from the Human Services Department to speak about some of their really important work. First up, we will be introducing Tanya Kim. Tanya is an interim deputy director at the Seattle Human Services Department. In her current role, she supports the Youth and Family Empowerment Division and is standing up the Safe and Thriving Communities Division. Really looking forward to learning about that. She has held numerous positions within the department and even worked for Council Member John Okamoto. Prior to the city, Tanya worked at community-based organizations, including Wing Luke Museum and Powerful Voices. Her current board service includes King County's Children and Youth Advisory Board and Cedar Mere Foundation. Tanya's pride and joy are her two adult kids. One of them is in college and the other just got a job. Tanya, thank you so much for being here. Please remember to unmute your microphone, and you're live on the Civic Coffee Hour.
Well, I am thrilled to be here. And I have to say first, can I just say that how much I learned from Nancy, and you just reminded me why I love the library system so much. So what a joy to follow Seattle Public Libraries in that space. I also want to say that it's an honor to join you, and I thank Lenny so much for the prep and our age-friendly team for the invitation. That said, I come to you with both a heavy heart and optimism for the future. So heavy heart because of our history, the current state of violence, and the increasing violence that's happening. Optimism for the future because I believe in community and community-led solutions. And I believe harmful policies and systems of oppression will change over time if we do address root causes, if we are open to transformational change, and if we remain persistent. People across the nation and world are calling for change. Here locally, for example, our esteemed colleagues at the Seattle King County Public Health, Zero Youth Detention, are leading a regional approach to ending gun violence through a public health model. They are focusing on co-creating pathways to success. At the city, we have the Mayor's Office on Domestic Violence and Sexual Assault, and they're leading the city's response to gender-based violence. And in moments, you'll hear from Law and Fam, who will highlight this work. And our community leaders and community organizers recently published the Black Brilliance Research Project, or Research Report, sorry. There's a lot happening. And with that, HSD is aligning our numerous safety investments and the way that we work together to be stronger. And I have the privilege of sharing what that looks like. Next slide. So when we talk about the Safe and Thriving Communities Division, one of the first questions that I get is, well, what is the budget, or what are the investments that will be in this new division? This year, we're standing up the new division, and when we talk about investments, these are specific investments for providers, so they show up as contracts. in the space of MODVSA, that's the Mayor's Office on Domestic Violence and Sexual Assault. There's about almost 9.4 million of contracts. In the space of community safety work being done outside of MODVSA, it's about 6 million. And there are a couple notable council ads that people are in the community watching. It says 2020, that's when it was first introduced, but we didn't get it into our budget until 2021. And that's a $4 million one-time investment for what's going to be a newly stood up Seattle Community Safety Initiative Hub. And it's really to address when shots are fired, what kind of response can occur outside of the response from Seattle Police Department. And then there's another investment of about $12 million to increase the capacity of organizations' ability to offer more safety services in the community. So with that, you could see that there's approximately $30 million worth of contracts that we invest in our community-based organizations. Next slide. A very basic org chart, very high level, is outlined here. And so a little bit of context is right now in our department, which is relatively large, we have critical work that's happening there. In its previous iteration, they were living in different spaces in the department. Now we're bringing all of those investments and people, including direct services, into this one division. And so the highlight of that is it'll have its dedicated leadership. So we're currently in the process of designing what that hiring process will look like. So we're hiring for a division director. We will also have space and build into the organization a role for community engagement, community accountability. And so that's in the far left space with the community liaison. Next to that, there'll be a function where somebody is tracking all the related policy that is occurring locally and regionally and nationally, as well as functioning as our budget lead. As I had mentioned, just in community investments alone, we have approximately 30 million. And then right dead set in the center is MODVSA, and they're focusing on gender-based violence, and we'll speak more about that in moments. We have a new unit. This team came over from the Seattle Police Department. It is called the Crime Survivor Services Unit, and there's a couple teams within that. And then finally, community safety, and this is where we're really focusing on the harms of the criminal legal system in this space and reducing community violence. Next. A little bit more description about those boxes. So for the division director and some of their direct reports, they'll provide leadership, focus on community engagement, strategic planning, budget oversight, etc. The Mayor's Office on Domestic Violence and Sexual Assault is a funder and convener. Lon has been educating me and really also and will educate all of us shortly on the other important work that is actually more about systems coordination and systems change as it pertains to the city's response to gender-based violence. And so more on that to come. Next. Here's the new unit that came over from the Seattle Police Department. There are two teams. One is the Crime Victim Advocacy Program, which works closely with detectives and prosecutors to ensure survivors have a voice in the criminal process and that their rights are protected. The second team, and that's a team of staff. And with the victim support team, there are staff, but mostly volunteers who respond in weekends to crime scenes at officers' request to assist domestic violence survivors and their children. It's a pretty remarkable direct services team that is new to HSD, but that have a dotted line to Seattle Police Department. And then lastly, the far right box, if you remember that visual, is the community safety investments. And those contracts support youth, adults, and families harmed by the criminal legal system through various supports and services. Next. Oh, that's it. I was thinking I would keep going on, but I created this slide presentation. In a nutshell, it's really just to say that there is good work that's happening. We're bringing all the work together, so then that way we could better align. We interface with a lot of the same systems, and we're prepared to lean in and partner with the community as we move towards the transformational change that the community is seeking and that we absolutely support. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much for this overview, Tanya. I'm sure our communities are interested in learning what HSD is doing with setting up this new division, and we appreciate the overview. Why don't we check in with Michael to see if there are any comments in our live Q&A.
Thanks, Lenny. Well, we can see the numbers that are attending, but it looks like our attendees are shy this morning. I'm wondering, Tanya, is this one of those instances where the city's just going to post things on the website and tell people what's going on, or are there ways that people can get information back to you and your colleagues about what they think community safety looks like in their neighborhood?
Oh, very good question. There are a couple things. And so we, as it pertains to the Human Services Department and the services that we invest in, I absolutely welcome all feedback. You can reach me again by email, and that's tanya.kim@seattle.gov. But I do want our community to know that we have two work groups that are helping to stand up this division. And we had numerous forums at the end of last year when we were exploring how to better align, and community members as well as community stakeholders or other partners across the city opted in to support a couple work groups. One is to hire that division director, so I am not doing that in a vacuum. And then the second is developing a community accountability structure. And so we have lots of representation, over 35 folks who are participating on that work group too. And so what I would recommend is, if you have some curiosity, please feel free to reach out to me. I will respond. That said, I am working with the well-regarded Michael Taylor Judd to be able to drive folks to our website. And so really encourage people to look at the Human Services website that's full of resources. There we're having we're going to put some updates on the progress of the safety division and standing that up. And so if you want to keep track of us and hold us accountable, please visit our website for updates.
All right. Thank you very much, Tanya. Looks like there is one more question that has just showed up there. And that is, would you give us an update on the search and hiring of the HSD director?
Oh, very good question. We have an interim director by the name of Helen Howell, and she is here until there is a process that is done, and the mayor's office will be driving that process. And so that essentially is what I know.
All right. Thank you for that update. I have a quick follow-up on sort of the outreach that's happening right now. We started off our program, and Nancy alluded to it a little bit, in terms of language access and, just this general idea of connection, inclusion, and accessibility. I'm wondering, from what I understand about this new division is that there are going to be contracts issued to community organizations so they could do this work of responding to what's happening in the communities. And some of these organizations may be, I'm guessing, would be in communities where English is not the primary language. What efforts are underway in HSD about this type of inclusionary effort?
Another excellent question. And each unit will, or each team, depending on what they do, addresses language access differently. And so I had talked about the Crime Survivor Services, for example. If there is another language that the individual or families speak, they have access to interpreters, for example. For the request for RFP, or the request for proposals, which is called an RFP, where we essentially will say, hey, we have a funding opportunity. Here are the guidelines. Here is the application. In fact, we are moving to share that information in various languages too. So again, I definitely encourage the community to visit our website. And so Michael, again, is helping to support our funding processes to ensure that they are accessible in different languages as well. It's very important. The other thing, I'll go another layer deeper, is that when we have RFPs, we often will create them in a way that lifts provider and community voice and allows community to say, here is the need or the problem where we know best how to solve. Here is the population, and here's our approach. And so we also really listen to community saying it needs to be done in this language specific way, and then therefore here is how we could do it. And then we rate the proposals based on that level of cultural competency and access. And that's taken into consideration as well, because we know that different communities are, while maybe some of the root causes come from the same place, the solutions and the needs might be unique. And so we also take that into consideration as we're investing. I hope that those are some good examples of how we're incorporating language access, but I will say there's always room for improvement.
Absolutely. We can, I mean, those of you who are just joining us, there is a way to get subtitles or real-time captions in up to 7 languages, not at once. But we know that there are more languages in our community, so we can always improve with all of our processes. So thank you so much for addressing that, Tanya. Why don't we go next to another moderator, the one we introduced earlier on the program. Gita, is there anything else that has come through in the live Q&A for Tanya?
So there's a question on how do I make sure I get the latest updates from Seattle Human Services? Oh, okay, there's another one that came in. How is the Safety Committee addressing the current violence towards our Asian community?
So I will defer to Michael, perhaps, who can talk to us about how to get updates. There's a couple different ways that the community members can get updates from the Human Services Department by signing up for this and that. And I know we're on social media and we've got things that exist that I'm not even tapping into. So Michael is the best person, I think, to follow up on that. How the Human Services Department is responding to violence that's occurring. So this is deep and raw right now. I will say that we have internally, we have a really strong organizing group of staff. And I know that there's a lot of deep, thoughtful conversation about the violence, and it really stems, it's complicated. There's a history of this, and it doesn't help when our previous top leadership was stoking, perhaps fueling some of this. And that's my personal opinion. And so with the rhetoric, it is becoming increasingly painful. And it doesn't, let me just say that it doesn't just hurt the Asian Pacific Islander community, it hurts all of us. In the same way that when we look at police brutality and other forms of violence, it doesn't just hurt Black and Brown communities, it hurts all of us. And so we collectively need to respond, and that is something that we're actively working on. And so that is, you know, you're hearing kind of an emotional response because I am Korean American, was born in the United States and showing up as a human and as a leader. But there are deep root issues that we must continue to address.
Thank you so much, Tanya. I appreciate your personal response and talking about what we're doing at the city and at HSD. And thank you for whoever asked that question. It's important. This is why we have Civic Coffee Hour. It's you know, to learn what the city is doing, but also to keep our local government, our city government accountable.
Can I just add, Lenny, that I was just thinking about, you know, and it's not just the Human Services Department. You know, our mayor has also, you know, is supporting the Asian community in different ways. The Office of Civil Rights is here. When violence is very clearly targeting communities because of race. So this is clearly a joint effort. And so HSD plays one part of that, but we will continue to monitor and see how our investments and how leadership may need to adapt as these developments continue. But I just wanted to throw out there that there are lots of folks who are paying attention right now.
Thank you for adding that, Tanya. And Tanya's contact information is again on the slide, tanya.kim@seattle.gov. And as far as the Office for Civil Rights goes, we just recently had a presentation by the director from the Office for Civil Rights. And Mariko Lockhart talked about some of these and other issues. And we also had a presentation by Mike Shin, who described how people can file complaints based on discrimination they experience. I would encourage you to check it out. It's on our YouTube channel. We'll put a link to it right up here, and let us know what you think. And there's actually been a conversation in the comments of that video with some additional questions, and we welcome your participation in that way too. So at this time, I want to thank Tanya, and let us continue with the presentation here today. And next up, we have Lan Pham, who is representing the office that Tanya has mentioned several times. And Lan has close to 30 years of experience in health and human services. Currently, she is the manager of the Seattle Mayor's Office on Domestic Violence and Sexual Assault, where she has worked since the year 2000. The office's main responsibilities include coordinating interdepartmental response, leading strategic program and policy planning, and managing community-based investments. And I'm sure we'll hear a lot more about that in a moment. Prior to joining the city, Lan was executive director of API Women and Family Safety Center, a community-based organization specialized in community mobilizing, client advocacy, and in school and community programming to raise awareness of gender-based violence. Other notable experience includes program director of the International Community Health Services, program manager of Asian Counseling and Referral Services, and research coordinator with the University of Washington School of Social Work. Lan is passionate about social change, systems improvement, community development, and mentorship. Thus, in non-city time, you can find Lan either teaching at the University of Washington Master of Social Work program or participating in local and national boards. Lan, such a pleasure to have you on the program. We appreciate you finding the time to be here. So if you go ahead and unmute your microphone, you'll be live on the Civic Coffee Hour.
Thank you so much, and good morning, everyone. Thank you so much, Lenny and the Age-Friendly Seattle team, for the opportunity to highlight the important work of, especially now, re-envisioning safety for the department and the community. I'm also especially grateful for the opportunity to share the work, not only of our office, but our longstanding collaborations and partnership with communities and systems to address ending gender-based violence. And as Tanya mentioned, and as one of our participants who have the question about hate crimes right now, and while I'm excited about this invitation and for us to talk about this, I am with very heavy heart and saddened by the continuous violence that are perpetrated in our communities, and which is rooted in prejudice, hate, oppression, and most notably, as you all know, the recent murders in Atlanta. Acts of violence fueled by racism, misogyny, and xenophobia, like this, is not something that is new, unfortunately, and it does call our attention to another important issue, which is gun violence, which we see so much of an issue that crosses also gender-based violence issues. So I think that this is, I really want to kind of set this as a stage for framing to talk about our office, because I really want to talk about solutions and the great things that we're doing. But I want us to know, like, I think all of us understand that we wouldn't be here if there were not these issues in our communities. And it is the solution that it is us working together to really address this issue. And so in that spirit, I really want to be able to kind of share with you what the city is doing, what we're doing in partnership, not only with the community, with the folks that we fund, but also with systems folks to address this issue. And to set another context to our conversation is that really acknowledge the fact that during COVID, gender-based violence has been coined internationally as a shadow pandemic. And Seattle, King County is not an exception to that. DV-related homicides are up in King County in comparison to 2019. DV calls to Seattle Police Department significantly increased from February and May of 2020. And calls to the National DV Hotline in King County has also seen an increase. So we all know that this is something that we're contending with right now. And so this whole conversation about re-envisioning safety is super important, and it is super important that that conversation also includes the issue of gender-based violence, especially with the latest violence that we've seen in Atlanta, in which it's not only a race crime, but definitely women and women of color were targeted. So with that, let's begin. So thank you. If you want to move to the first slide, So again, setting context is, I feel like the city of Seattle and our office has been very fortunate in that I see us working very much in alignment with the community. So for folks who are not seeing the slides, the first slide is really a picture of all the work that has happened and the social movement and the community organizing around violence against women that's happened. The first photo is the annual vigil that's coordinated by API Chaya due to the murder of Susanna Blackwell and her friends at the King County Courthouse, to the Take Back the Night events at the University of Washington, to the Women's March in Seattle. Next, please. Great, thanks. The next slide is really about linking that to really talking about our story, because something that I'm always very cognizant about of the space in which I sit here with the city is that it was not me that allowed for a voice at the table to talk about gender-based violence. There's many women, men, and folks that have come before me to highlight this issue enough of an importance from the community to have the city of Seattle really pay attention and create an office and a space for us to have this conversation and continue the work because of the crimes in which we've seen perpetually and which is continuously an issue. And here in the slide, you can see that the movement of ending gender-based violence in Seattle established, go all the way back to the 70s. It probably has been way before that, in which women were just bringing their friends who are survivors into their homes. But here we see that Seattle Rape Relief was the first organization to address gender-based violence in Seattle, and it was in 1972. And here, you know, for folks who are at home, we have a list of organizations that since then have formed up until 2012 and probably beyond until now, in which are addressing this issue. I'm not mentioning organizations such as Asian Counseling or the YWCA or Mother Nation, who are provide holistic services that have DV programs, but these are programs in which, or agencies that are specifically formed just to address gender-based violence. So the next slide, please. The next 4 slides, there are many fine prints highlighting policy legislations at the city level addressing gender-based violence. And I won't go and read through all of them, but if you're interested, these slides are made available to you. If you're curious, like me, I'm a history buff, so whenever I'm in a space, I always want to know sort of the path of where I'm going is going back to the sort of the why we're here. And you know, if you can take a look at this first slide, highlighting sort of the history of the city in doing this work, is it also went all the way back to 1977. So you can maybe assume that, you know, a lot of the organizing work has really propelled local government to really respond to gender-based violence. So next slide, please. And most of the work I really want to highlight in which it really formalized in the government entity is really around 1989 when our office was also originated. But this slide also shows that at the same time in which the Mayor's Office on Domestic Violence and Sexual Assault was created, that also DV programs in the courts, in the law department, in Seattle Police Department was also formed. So it was with the intention that it was really that we needed to have a coordinated systems response to really address this issue. And historically, actually, the first staff in our office that was hired was the one FTE, in which it was to coordinate the Domestic Violence Prevention Council. And it is a council that is co-chaired and still is co-chaired by the head of the Seattle Human Services Department, the chief of police, the city attorney, and also the council member who's head of public safety. And it is with that vision in which our office still holds today, in which one of our primary role is that of coordinated citywide response and working across different departments and also with our partners in King County, as well as the community, such as the Coalition Ending Gender-Based Violence and the Women's Commission, to make this work happen. So moving forward. So I'm going to skip through the next 2 slides because it's just a series of different policies and legislations that have really propelled this work forward. It is a lot. I know these slides are super heavy to read, but I really want for us to, as we're looking at these slides, to really feel sort of the impact of the movement, that this is not the work of one person or one individual, one agency. It is really a collective that has really propelled us to where we are today. And it is really in that spirit that we need to move forward as we're rethinking about safety. Next, please. Oh, there's several of these slides. Amazing, amazing work for us to benefit from. Okay, thanks, Lenny. So here we're seeing that, you know, the previous slides have really set the foundation for our office. We're always guided by sort of the vision that we are in partnership here. So our office really envisioned a community free from violence, abuse, and exploitation. We really acknowledge that violence, oppression thrives in isolation and divisiveness. And so our job is to connect folks, organizations, agencies, and to connect the dots. And that's really what we do. And I'm going to show you how we do that. And again, just to summarize it all, is that we truly believe that ending violence is a community's response, and it requires a community approach. Next, please. As mentioned by Tanya, our office is not only a funder, we also convene. We see ourselves as a thought partner because we are also in spaces in which we are not in front of the room. We're a thought leader in which we really like to see ourselves as supporting the community by bringing the best programs, policies, and we do a lot of research and also attend a lot of conferences in which we bring back ideas and run it by our partners and see if these are things that they would like to adopt. And so I will show you and share with you some of the most innovative work in which we have brought from other cities to the city of Seattle. As a funder, we, as Tanya mentioned, we invest in approximately $9 million on an annual basis on prevention, intervention, coordinate response, and offender accountability. And these are the work in which we work very closely with our community partners to hold that space. Next, please. So collectively, for the organizations that we partner with, we serve more than 10,000 survivors' families on an annual basis, and we have a number of different investment areas to make this happen. We fund after-hour cell phone, veteran intervention programs, legal assistance, mobile flexible advocacy, outreach and education, prevention, shelter and transitional housing, and also systems enhancements. Next. On this slide, I know the prints are also very tiny, but as we sort of continue to do this work, we just continue to snowball our efforts. And so this slide shows you all of the partners that we work very closely with, and it is not in name only. We actually meet with these folks very often. We hold meetings about 50 times a year. We have meetings on a quarterly basis and also on a monthly basis with the purpose of systems enhancements and systems coordination and response. Next, please. I have mentioned about bringing sort of the best promising practices to Seattle. Day One is one such program, and I had the sort of the experience of Day One as actually a provider when I was in the community working at the Safety Center. And it's one of the reasons which I'm drawn to this office, because I love the fact that in which we're just not just intervening and addressing violence by responding, but we're also thinking ahead of how can we better work together and make things easier for folks who are providing the services. So Day One is a program that has been with the city for maybe over 10 years, but we are working with the Coalition Ending Gender-Based Violence to actually tweak it a little bit. And so you might see a different version of Day One in the next couple of years. But currently, Day One is an online network system that allows advocates to identify in real time the number of available beds and services and connect survivors and to shelters with one call. So if you are a member of Day One, and right now we have about 32 different members, and they are not only within Seattle or King County, but we have folks as north as Snohomish and as south as Thurston County who are part of Day One program. And so when you are a member, you can log on to see all the other network and member services. And for folks who are in the DV field, really understand that a lot of our survivors, they might not want to stay in the same space. They might want to find a shelter very far away from where they're at. And so the collaborative network of Day One and it being so comprehensive and so wide allows for us to increase options for folks to be able to transition and co-advocate with an organization that might not be in your same county. So for the survivor to be able to get support elsewhere. But something to note about that is that as much as this is a great system in which it shows available beds in real time, there are not enough beds available. So that's sort of an issue, that's an ongoing issue that we contend with, in which our work crosses very much with the ending homelessness movement. And we're continuously hearing that, not only for domestic violence and sexual assault survivors, but definitely for trafficking survivors as well, and especially now during COVID. The other service that we do coordinate is that we are home to the Peace in the Home helpline. And again, that's something that we're always looking for partnership. And I know that the Coalition and New Beginnings is an organization that we fund, but they are also in the process of developing a hotline. But prior to this, the Peace in the Home helpline has been around also for over 10 years, and it is a 24/7 hotline which connects survivors and advocates to an advocate who speaks their language in one call, and it is available in 14 different languages. It is different because when you're calling a hotline, you're not getting an operator who then you need to go through an interpreter. But we are currently contracting with Refugee Women's Alliance, API Chaya, and Consejo to hold those, for the advocates to hold those phone lines. And so survivors are able to connect directly in one call with an advocate that speaks their language, which is amazing. And again, I can't take credit for these programs. These programs have been here before my time, and it's, again, one of the reasons that I'm drawn to this office. Next, please. So this slide here really shows you, and again, apologies for the fine print, but you're more than welcome to kind of take this and read it and then email me if you have questions later. This is an example of how we connect the dots. So as mentioned, our job, I see the job of government is really to improve services, and the direct services needs to be done by folks who are most impacted by it, by survivors and providers and communities. And and we work with 3 different communities. We work with the general community population. We work with folks who are very much trained experts in the field, who are community-based agencies. And then we also work with folks who are very trained and have a different job to this, who are first responders in our criminal justice system. So you see them, to sort of see these groups that we convene on a quarterly and monthly basis as being either on the blue or in the red. The blue ones are to really call out the spaces in which we hold to enhance coordination among nonprofits, direct services, community-based organizations. And it is really with the intention that we're always very much client-centered approach. Our value is about the no wrong door approach, which means if you're a survivor, it doesn't matter your language, your background, or your preference, you will find an organization that can support you. And in order for us to provide that and fund that, we need to be able to fund a mosaic of organizations. So it's not about putting everybody into one box by saying that this is sort of the value that we hold and everybody else needs to sort of climb into that box. We want to be able to open that up and really for survivors to be to receive the services and support no matter where they're at. So again, these spaces are really for folks to come together and co-advocate, to not be in competition, because I feel like sometimes funders do create that unintended consequence of folks feeling like they really need to compete for clients. We're really wanting to do that away with that by bringing all the people we fund together and saying, how can you co-advocate? And it is okay. And we encourage the fact that one survivor can access 4 agencies, because the more support a survivor gets, the better, because it's the less isolation, the more resources, and the more of support that the person can be safe and stable. The red spaces, or the red writing here that you see, are really the criminal justice and the systems partners in which we work with. And again, we are not criminal justice folks, which makes us perfect folks to hold these spaces, because each of the folks, either in the courts or in with the police department or with prosecution, all of them are there to support survivors, but really looking at it from a very different angle. And for us, our job is to ensure that all these departments and agencies have communication, they speak the same language, and they're in alignment. And what we do that is even more special is, as a funder, we bring in our community-based organization to be in these spaces to really inform systems on how we can improve existing systems, knowing that survivors do access systems. You know, we do want to acknowledge the fact that data have shown us most of the time survivors of gender-based violence most likely will not see anybody. The first people that they will share with are people that they trust and love, as family, friends. And when given enough time or support, they will seek help from a nonprofit organizations. But some survivors don't seek help from nonprofits. They might not see family and friends, and they might go directly to law enforcement. And so with the value of a no wrong door approach, we really want to be client-centered, in which no matter what is the preference or the situation of the survivor, no matter what is their choice, that they have those options to choose from. And each of those options, they should get the best quality services as possible. So again, our job is not only to connect the dots, but bring in the best practices. So with that, I want to give you an example. So one of the best practices here is really calling out the Domestic Violence Intervention Project. So I had shared with you some slides about sort of the big picture and our role of coordinating systems-wide or citywide response. So we staff the Domestic Violence Prevention Council, which is number 6. A work group of that is the Criminal Justice Committee, in which members of that who do the direct services response do get to meet on a monthly basis and really talk through their issues of what they're contending with and how they can improve systems. And then they develop a work plan that they report back to the Domestic Violence Prevention Council, but they also have specific projects in which they themselves have identified that they would like to improve. So one such project was really a need several years ago to develop a better model for our Seattle Municipal Court to address batterer intervention. And so we had the opportunity to attend some local and national conferences with our Criminal Justice Committee members and identify 2 models that we really want to bring to Seattle. And one of them was the Colorado-based model that was in its 2nd year of research and data collection that had very good and promising results that was backed by the Office of Violence Against Women. So we took that model and we implemented it in Seattle, and now we're in our 2.5 year of the project, and it has shown some really good, promising results so far. And as a matter of fact, we are applying for funding to see how we can expand it and have sort of the phase 2 in which we really want to hone it back, where we connect with the community to say that this is, even though folks who are part of the systems need to go through the system, and for that experience, we want it to be as impactful as possible. When they leave the system, we want them to be really embraced by the community and seeing how that the community can continue to support them to modify behavior and to be healthy and maintain safety for the survivor. So I know that I've kind of been talking a lot and very quickly, and so we can move on, but I also want to make sure that there's enough time for Q&A. So perhaps the next slide, Lenny, please. Here are just some examples of work that we do that connect, that enhances systems, and I won't spend too much time on that. Maybe we can move to the next slide, and maybe the next one. And actually, the next one might be the very last one, so yes. So kind of to bring it all together, we also see ourselves as really where we are in the space to raise awareness, given that we collaborate and connect all the dots. So we like to bring our dots together. So there are opportunities about 5 times a year in which we do collaborate with community-based and also systems partners to host these events. So January is Human Trafficking Awareness Month. So we always want to have an event around that month. Usually January 11th is Human Trafficking Awareness Day. And so we've had events before. I think it was the last event we had was really highlighting the local, sort of the founding moms of the movement in Seattle, which was deeply moving because a lot of these women have been doing this work for so many years and are retiring. So it was really nice to be able to kind of give them some space and some acknowledgement. Sexual Assault Awareness Month is also, Denim Day is a time in which we also have community events. And I think the last event we had was really about highlighting the experiences of Indigenous women. The State Coalition have their 5K, and it's the opportunity in which we do get together a City of Seattle team to do a walk or run. So thanks, Tanya, for having participated in that in the past. And we've had a team as large as 32 members who joined us in that effort. Of course, DV Awareness Month happens in October, and we co-sponsor the Domestic Violence Symposium with King County on an annual basis to train up local folks on the issue. So I think this is definitely my last slide. And here are priorities. This priorities, even though it says 2021, it's been ongoing because it continues to be an issue that we feel is super important, even moving past COVID and beyond to probably 2022 as well.
All right. Thank you so much, Lan. We do appreciate this really detailed overview of your work and the history of this movement of this office, but even beyond the office. So at this time, we have heard from two of our moderators. We've heard from Michael and Gita. Doesn't look like anyone has any questions on the phone at the moment. So I'd like to turn it over to Justin for a question that looks like it came through here in the online Q&A. Justin?
So one question that I'm seeing here for Lon is, do you assist older women who have been financially exploited or physically or verbally abused?
Thank you for that question. We don't provide any direct services. Our community support and crime survivor services program do have an advocate to work with on elder abuse cases, and so that is one space in which folks can get assistance. I know that in ADS, in Aging and Disability Services Division, there are also 2 advocates that help support older survivors who might have issues not only with abuse but also financial exploitation. And so the answer to that is yes. Do we do it in our office? No, but we do know folks who can and can direct you to that. So if you are interested, please send me an email and I can get you connected.
Thanks. We have another question here in the chat, and I think this one came through for Tanya earlier. What data is being used and shared with the community to illustrate progress?
That is such a wonderful question. We are setting aside some funding. I discussed earlier that there is a one-time add of $12 million in the space of community safety. And right now, I think I neglected to mention that we have an active request for proposal on our website. Maybe I did mention it. So please go to our website if you are interested in applying for funds. Some of those funds that total up to the 12 million is reserved to hire an evaluator to ensure that we're looking at the right data, that we're collecting the right data, and that we have a shared North Star in terms of where we want to have our providers contributing towards in the future. And, you know, I that's just kind of an oversimplification, but as we've been talking about too, different communities need different things. And so it's got to be a community partnership in order to develop evaluation and data collection together. So then that way we're not forcing that square scenario that Lon had mentioned. And so we will be hiring an external evaluator.
All right. Thank you for addressing that, Tanya. And I've just, for those of you who are joining us online, I have just put up a slide there with the link to, and it's kind of a long URL. I'll read it out, and I trust my moderators will post it in a live Q&A, and that's seattle.gov/human-services/services-and-programs/supporting-safe-communities. That's a mouthful. But I think if you go to seattle.gov/human services, you can navigate from there successfully. And perhaps we will get a shortened URL at some point that we can share with the community. Well, at this time, why don't I throw it back to Gita for perhaps our final question here on this program. And it has to do with language access, actually. Here we go, Gita.
Thank you, Lenny. The question that came in is there any language capability for Russian speakers?
And I'm wondering if that's addressing gender-based violence. Because yes, the Refugee Women's Alliance does have advocacy services and advocates who speak Russian. And the hotline also is, you can connect to a Russian advocate directly through the hotline as well.
Thank you for that question, and thank you for having that resource. That's really important. So as we close for the day, I would like to invite you to come back in a month's time for another coffee hour on the third Thursday of the month. We will be continuing with our recognition of the National Fair Housing Month as we welcome Emily Alvarado, Director of Seattle Office of Housing. She will cover rental housing and assistance, low-income homeowner programs, and other resources for low-income households with specific emphasis on the impacts of COVID-19. We hope that you will join us, and the access is the same. It's bit.ly/age-friendly live, no spaces, but each word is capitalized. Or you can join us by phone at the numbers that we've mentioned previously. And speaking of phone numbers, we want to remind you of the Community Living Connections phone number, which is 1-844-348-5464. That is the number you can call to locate an agency in your area, which they're at various stages of reopen right now, but some of them you may be able to walk in and connect with an advocate on a variety of issues related to aging or disability. We have about 1 minute remaining, so I would like to say thank you all for being an age-friendly champion. What is an age-friendly champion? To us, it's somebody who believes in making cities and other spaces better to grow up and grow old across genders, ages, and races, so that our community is better off in the long run. We hope that you will, again, join us for these live events, but also check out other work that we're doing at seattle.gov/age-friendly. We will see you again in a couple of weeks. And until then, we hope that you enjoy the rest of your week. Take care, everybody, and до свидания.